Ongi etorriak izan zaitezte, BBVA Fundazioa ezagutzaren mugak sariak ekitaldira. Muy buenas tardes. Les damos una cordial bienvenida a la ceremonia de entrega de las ediciones 12ª y 13ª de los premios Fronteras del Conocimiento. Una doble celebración de la ciencia y la cultura que reconoce contribuciones a escala global que han ampliado significativamente el conocimiento científico, la tecnología y la creación musical. Como pueden ver en la pantalla, en este momento tiene lugar el saludo de las autoridades y la presidencia de esta ceremonia a los galardonados y los jurados. A continuación se les ofrecerá un homenaje solemne de la cultura popular vasca, el agurra o reverencia, la parte final de la danza de honor aurresku.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Awards, the 12th and 13th edition. This is a dual celebration of science and culture that recognizes contributions from around the world that have significantly expanded scientific knowledge, technology and musical creation. As you can see on the screen, at this moment, the authorities and the presidency of this ceremony are greeting the laureates and the juries. They will then be paid homage to, thanks to the popular Basque bow called the agurra, which is the final part of the aurresku dance of honor.
Jaun-andreok ongi etorri Euskalduna jauregira. Eraikin barruan ezin da erre, terrazetan eta kanpoko gunetan soilik erre daiteke. Zuen sakeleko telefonoak itzali eta argazki edo filmaketarik ez dezazutela egin eskatzen dizuegu. Osasun arrazoiengatik, ikuskizuna joaten duen bitartean, maskara jantzita eramatea eta segurtasun distantzia mantentzea beharrezkoa dela jakinarazten dizuegu. Saioa behin bukatuta, gitzinaka irten zaiteztela eskatzen dizuegu. Segurtasun distantzia mantenduaz momentu oro, eta aldela eskilerak erabiliaz.
Tenemos el honor de contar en esta ceremonia con la participación del Lehendakari del Gobierno vasco, el excelentísimo señor don Iñigo Urkullu, el diputado general de Vizcaya, excelentísimo señor don Unai Rementería, y el alcalde de Bilbao, excelentísimo señor don Juan Mari Aburto. Hacen su entrada en el auditorio el Lehendakari y las autoridades, acompañados por el director de la Fundación BBVA, don Rafael Pardo. Acceden a continuación los premiados en la edición 13ª. You may take your seat, please. Thank you.
We sincerely would like to thank all the guests for their participation in this tribute to our award winners. A social event of this kind would have been impossible during the last year and a half because of the pandemic, but today, thanks to scientific knowledge, public policies based on that knowledge, the agile response of biopharmaceutical companies, and of course the behaviour of the public, we can attend in person the events of the Frontiers of Knowledge Awards, which since 2019 have had their permanent headquarters in Bilbao, a city in which the BBVA group was established in the mid-19th century and which it shares history and attributes such as entrepreneurial spirit, innovation based on the best of knowledge and openness to global society.
Invito al alcalde.
And I should like to now ask the Mayor of Bilbao, Mr. Juan Mari Arbuto, to give a few words of welcome.
Alkate jauna, zurea da hitza.
The floor is yours.
Lehendakari jauna, aldun nagusi.
Dear Mr. President and Mr. Deputy General of the Provincial Council of Vizcaya and Chairman of the BBVA Foundation and Chairman of CSIC, authorities, ladies and gentlemen, laureates, good evening everybody. And yesterday at the Town Council we welcomed all of you, and it's wonderful to be here tonight at this conference centre once again with all of you, sharing these minutes and these moments. Because this is a wonderful experience for somebody like me, the mayor. It's very unusual to enjoy the company of 24 very outstanding people that are the very best of our society, that are the very best of mankind. So that's why I would like to thank them very much indeed on behalf of our citizens. And we're here to celebrate the awards-giving ceremony of Frontiers of Knowledge. Many thanks for coming to Bilbao to hold this ceremony, Frontiers of Knowledge, and many thanks to the 24 privileged minds that represent the very best of mankind that are here tonight with us at this Palacio Euskalduna, which is the symbol of the new Bilbao that is committed towards knowledge and with a future that is based on sustainability and solidarity for all.
That yesterday was a very special day for this mayor. It is incredible how our way of looking at things has changed so much in just a few short months. Last year, nobody could foresee what our world would be like now. The necessary steps are being taken to eradicate the accursed coronavirus, thanks to scientific knowledge and to international and interinstitutional collaboration at all levels. We are here today in the Euskalduna Conference Centre. It is considered to be one of the best congress centers in the world and stands on the land that used to be home to the Euskalduna shipyards. The Euskalduna Conference Centre and the Guggenheim Museum, just a few hundred meters away from here, mark the start of this new Bilbao. It is a city committed to social justice and sustainability in all its aspects. Bilbao was awarded at the Lee Kuan Yew City Prize in 2010 in recognition of its extraordinary urban regeneration process in barely 3 decades and named as the best European city in 2018. Bilbao es una ciudad orgullosa.
Bilbao is very proud of its past, and it's a city that's known how to reinvent itself many, many times, and which is very excited about the future, and also with a focus on innovation, talent and human development in the broadest possible sense, and also from the point of view of values. Bilbao wants to become a city of values. We have to build our future based on values that are shared by all society. Because, as I said yesterday, the post-COVID world will be more fair, more sustainable, more human, or if that doesn't happen, it won't exist. But you, the laureates, you are the protagonists of this awards-giving ceremony, Frontiers of Knowledge, organized by the BBVA Foundation.
Zientzia, ezagutza eta bikaintasunagaz lotzeko. Eta eskerrik asko nola ez berriro BBVA Fundazioari. Atzo esan nizuenez, Presidente Carlos, Bilbao beti izan da eta izango da zuen etxea. Porque vuestra casa...
This is, you must feel at home here, because we citizens of Bilbao feel very proud of being able to participate in this international celebration of human knowledge.
Around the world, who embody the best of humanity, congratulations for this well-deserved prize. I hope it is just the first of many other awards that recognize your contribution to human progress and to the construction of a solidarity-based and sustainable future that offers opportunities and guarantees decent life for everyone on our fragile planet. Y espero que cuando regresen a sus hogares.
And I hope that when you go back home, I hope that you will always remember your stay in Bilbao. So as from now on, you will be the ambassadors of our city. And you will see that this territory is not just a dot on the map, but it's rather a vibrant and committed city, a sustainable future that we all have to write together with the ink of knowledge, the gold of the 21st century that has been influenced by uncertainty and also by the opportunities of a new future, a future full of hope and full of enthusiasm for mankind. Thank you very much.
Eskerrik asko, alkate jauna.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. The Frontiers of Knowledge Awards, established 14 years ago, reflect the map of knowledge at the close of the 20th century and the present time, and include categories for basic science, information technology, biology and biomedicine, economics, social sciences, humanities, music, and 2 categories central to our understanding interaction with the environment: climate change and ecology and conservation biology. In all of these different fields, particularly significant advances have been made by one or more individuals, with no limitation put on the number of laureates for a given contribution. The Frontiers of Knowledge Awards are a benchmark on a global scale, attested to by the impressive list of men and women recognized for fundamental contributions, 154 to date, of whom 15 have subsequently received the Nobel Prize in the 3 categories that overlap with the Swedish Academy Awards. In the remaining categories, the majority, the contributions are equally valuable, even though, for reasons of the date of establishment of the Nobel Prizes, they are probably not part of this family of awards. Today, we celebrate the visible result of the work of many years of researchers and creators who dared and succeeded in going far beyond the legacy received, supported by networks of collaborators near and far, and institutions guided by excellence and merit. These unique efforts and contributions crystallize in the Frontiers Awards, thanks first to departments and colleagues, peers of the laureates, who selected and nominated a subset of the many valuable contributions. And secondly, thanks to the work of the jurors and the juries, who, operating with complete independence, applying the best metrics in each field and with no conflict of interest, identified what they judged to be the best of the best. In the pre-evaluation of the candidacies and the formation of the juries, the BBVA Foundation has the impartial and selfless collaboration of the leading multidisciplinary scientific institution in Spain, the CSIC. Professor Rosa Menéndez, president of the CSIC, does us the honor of co-chairing the ceremony, and we also have a large representation of the jurors. I would appreciate a round of applause for all of them.
Los galardones tienen un símbolo artístico.
The awards have an artistic symbol that you will have been able to see both in the video and in the programs that you've received. Its author is the artist Blanca Muñoz. It's made up of curved lines that intertwine and suggest the dynamic interrelation between the different branches of science and culture represented by the 8 categories of the awards. For health and social reasons and recommendations, the presentation of these diplomas and the artistic symbol of the awards will not take place physically during this ceremony. We begin with the winners in the 8 categories of the 12th edition of the awards. In the case of basic science, the laureates are Charles H. Bennett, Gilles Brassard and Peter Shaw for their particularly outstanding contributions to quantum computation and communication, bringing together concepts from mathematics, physics, and computer science. In biology and biomedicine, the prize has been awarded to Michael Hall and David Sabatini for the discovery of the mTOR pathway as the main regulator of animal cell growth, which plays a key role in metabolism, aging, and cancer. In information and communication technologies, the Frontier Award goes to Isabelle Gouillon, Bernhard Schellkopf and Vladimir Vapnik for their fundamental contributions to machine learning, which has profoundly influenced the building of intelligent computational systems. In ecology and conservation biology, the laureates are Carlos Duarte, Terence Hughes, and Daniel Pauly for their essential contributions to the understanding of oceans and for applying that knowledge to the management and conservation of marine habitats and fisheries. In climate change, the award goes to Kerry Emanuel for his fundamental contributions to the understanding of tropical cyclones and the impact of climate change on them. In the category of economics, finance and business management, the winners are Philippe Aguillon and Peter Howitt for their contributions to the study of innovation, technological change and competition policy. In humanities and social sciences, the laureates are Susan Fisk and Shelley Taylor for laying the foundations for multiple areas of social psychology with vital contributions in the field of social cognition and its role in human behaviour. In music and opera, the award goes to Maestro Arvo Pärt for cultivating a unique sound world that has made a profound connection with audiences around the globe. So let's meet now all the winners of the 12th edition through a video that was made in their respective work environments. I invite all the laureates of the 12th edition to come to the centre of the stage to receive our recognition together with the presidency. Please give them a warm round of applause.
You may sit, please. Thank you very much and congratulations. Procedemos ahora.
We now move on to the awarding of the Frontiers of Knowledge Awards in the 8 categories of the 13th edition. In basic sciences, the award has been given to Paul Alevizaitos and Michael Gretzel for their contributions to the development of nanomaterials for energy conversion, which has been applied in solar cells and optoelectronics. In biology and biomedicine, the award goes to David Julius and Adam Pataputian for identifying temperature, pain and pressure receptors, shedding light on how to treat chronic and acute pain. In information and communication technologies, the winners are John Hennessy and David Patterson for founding computer architecture as a new scientific field and developing the RISC technology, which is found today in the main processes of virtually all computing devices, including mobile phones. In ecology and conservation biology, the award goes to Sandra Diaz, Sandra Laborel and Mark Westerby for broadening the concept of biodiversity to include functional diversity through their pioneering work on the functional characteristics of plants.
En cambio climático.
In climate change, the winners are Neil Adger, Ian Burton and Karen O'Brien for their pioneering studies on how social conditions and culture influence our ability to adapt to climate change. In economics, finance and management, the award goes to Ben Bernanke, Mark Gertler, Noburo Kiyotaki and John Moore for their fundamental contributions to understand how imperfections in financial markets can lead to deep recessions.
En humanidades y
In humanities and social sciences, the prize goes to Gerald Holton for his seminal contributions to the history of science, which have revealed the cultural and humanistic dimension of science and also the cultural influences on the shaping of science. And finally, in music and opera, the winner is Maestro Peter Echos for the artistic originality of his compositions and operas and his contribution to the advancement of music in the three facets of composer, conductor and educator. And now we're going to introduce you to all the winners of the 13th edition through a video made at their workplaces.
Ruego a todos los galardonados.
I should like all the winners of the 13th edition to please come to the centre of the stage to receive our recognition together with the presidency. Please give them a warm round of applause.
You may take your seat. Thank you very much and congratulations. Nuestra más cálida enhorabuena.
Our warmest congratulations to all the laureates. This double ceremony recognises a total of 35 laureates from the last 2 editions of the Frontier Awards. Due to this exceptional circumstance, unfortunately, it's not feasible to listen to the speeches of all of them, but only a representative sample of the calibre and meaning of all of the awarded contributions. Starting tomorrow, the acceptance speeches of the 35 award winners, which have been previously recorded, will be available on the BBVA Foundation website, both in video format and text. We encourage you to watch and read them. Read them all. Each speech reveals an exciting route to achieve results of greatest relevance to the present. All the speeches will be also distributed on the DVDs of the concert and the ceremony that we'll be sending to all of you shortly. Firstly, 3 researchers who have made fundamental progress in understanding and finding solutions to the great environmental challenges of our times will speak. The Frontiers Awards have focused on these areas since their inception. There are challenges of unprecedented scale and depth, and for which it's not possible to think of a solution analogous to that represented by vaccines to tackle the pandemic. But we do have hopeful advances in science and technology, which must be accompanied by incentives and public policies that will induce drastic changes in our behaviour in many areas. We'll hear first from Professor Kerry Emanuel, winner of the Climate Change Award.
Professor.
Members of the presidency, authorities, committee members, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests. It is my great honor to accept this 12th edition of the BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award in the climate change category. It's truly humbling to join the list of highly distinguished scientists who have received this award. We climate scientists have had to learn how to respond to vigorous criticism and worse from some politicians and members of the general public, but we're not so very well practiced in accepting any kind of praise. In spite of the troubles we face, we all share in the wonderful joy of discovery that lies at the heart of all science. Part of that joy is the chance to share a life of research with colleagues and students. I take this opportunity to thank especially all the terrific students I've worked with over my 43-year career. There's little better in life than shared discovery and the chance to help a few generations of young scientists begin their own careers. I owe a great debt of gratitude to my wonderful wife of 31 years, Susan Emanuel, who is here with me tonight. When I first began my research career, climate scientists were free to engage in an unadulterated pursuit of basic understanding, driven by curiosity, largely unencumbered by the need to solve immediate societal problems or to produce short-term economic returns. Curiosity-driven science has been the engine for most major advances in science and has yielded as well great leaps forward in technology and medicine completely unanticipated at the outset of the research. Without basic science, we would not have such marvels as GPS, whose accuracy is made possible by general relativity, and it would have taken a decade rather than a year to develop the COVID vaccines that have saved millions of lives. Basic science has thrived in several developed nations whose enlightened governments created agencies, such as the National Science Foundation, that promoted science and protected it from being chained to short-term applications. But the intellectual environment in which climate science was being carried out changed in the late 1980s and 1990s as it became apparent that anthropogenic climate change poses a serious risk to civilization. Many climate scientists responded to the recognition of this risk by redirecting much of their research efforts into focused attempts to better quantify climate risk, while continuing their efforts to better understand the climate system. To effectively convey their research, they organized, through the United Nations, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, to periodically survey the latest research and summarize it in comprehensive reports. The IPCC is arguably the largest effort ever organized to summarize and convey scientific findings. And while the global ship of state has been slow to change course in response, it is now perceptibly turning onto a path of cleaner and safer energy. It's been my privilege to contribute to a small piece of our collective advance in understanding weather and climate. But I came here mainly to celebrate continuing advances in climate science and to applaud the BBVA for establishing a climate change category for its highly prestigious awards. The BBVA's visible recognition of climate science serves as a beacon for practicing and aspiring climate scientists throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vamos a escuchar ahora.
We're now going to listen to the speech by Professor Sandra Laborel, who won the Ecology and Conservation Biology Award.
Members of the Presidency, authorities, committee members, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests. Muy buenas tardes. Agradecido mucho a la Fundación.
Good afternoon. I should like to thank the BBVA Foundation for the tremendous honor of this prize. And I do that on behalf of Sandra Diaz and Mark Westerby, who share this award and would have liked to have been here with us this evening.
Comes as an opportunity to celebrate a near 25-year endeavor. We are recognized for our roles as visionaries and catalysts in a collective adventure that challenged researchers in plant ecology like ourselves to bring biodiversity into the assessment of global change impacts on planet Earth. Here was the problem. Climate modelers were aware that the thin green skin of the terrestrial ecosystems significantly influences climate, at least by sequestering and respiring carbon, exchanging water vapor and reflecting solar energy. Vegetation modelers then asserted that this green skin was not the same color or texture everywhere, and that short of taking this into account, projections of climate impacts and of the climate itself would be incorrect. But how could one account for all the biodiversity of vegetation across the globe to feed high-level models? About 391,000 species of vascular plants are currently known to science. In the highly biodiverse Iberian Peninsula, there are nearly 6,500 taxa. This region is absolutely famous for its tradition in outstanding plant science, yet it is still impossible to describe and anticipate the response of each species to changing climate and the impacts this would have on carbon and water cycling. Plant scientists had to imagine a solution. Lead thinkers thought this problem could be solved by using a few groups of species with similar behaviors, but how to group species? The concept of plant functional traits was born. Put simply, functional traits are characteristics of plant morphology, physiology, or reproduction that can be linked to their responses to environmental factors or soil fertility and to the impacts they have on ecosystem functions like carbon and water cycling. Additionally, these traits should be easy to measure for many species. We boarded this adventure as field-based ecologists who had a strong understanding of how plants behaved in natural systems. Together with motivated colleagues, we have helped advance the science of plant functional traits in more ways than anyone would have imagined. Make it simple, we were asked. Some plant physiologists thought that accounting for the intricacies of photosynthesis, respiration, and plant growth by measuring how much area a leaf has per unit mass, for instance, was simply wrong. Some vegetation scientists were outraged that when they simplify diverse communities by just describing plant leaves, how tall plants are, and the size of their seeds. This is where three qualities came to help. First, our creativity to use theory to generalize without ignoring that every plant is subtly different. Secondly, our optimism and persistence. Thirdly, our ability to motivate and charm others. 10 years later, we were proud that the concept was validated. We produced methods allowing compatible measurements on many species in many different contexts. Several groups of researchers were investigating how the structural and chemical properties of leaves reflect plant physiology, or whether such traits explain species distributions across climates. Nevertheless, our ultimate goal could only be reached if scientists could collect lots of data across all continents and ecosystem types. Additionally, even if this ambitious goal was reached, sharing data was essential to continue to discover global patterns. But scientists that excel at measuring plants in the field, like ourselves, are rarely those who can design and apply complex models coupling climate and vegetation. The next step in our adventure had a daring name, TRY. Impulsed in 2007 with exceptional scientists Colin Prentice, Jens Katge, Gerhard Bernisch, and Christian Wirth, the TRY database now contains nearly 280,000 taxa, which is well over half of all known plants. It supports continuing discoveries about global patterns in plant form and function, ever more advanced models of vegetation-climate interlinkages, and a multitude of unforeseen applications. I led a second transformative step. I really like pushing the boundaries and dreamt that what we did for understanding plant functions could be extended to plant interactions with other biota, like pollinators or soil microbes. If this were true, we could then help understand how environmental changes modify not only plant production for agriculture and forestry, or carbon sequestration for climate mitigation, but also other vital functions to human quality of life, for instance, pollination. It took me nearly 10 years to publish this discovery after very patient field data collection and work with local people in a small corner of the French Alps. Since then, others have continued to build the fundamental science on how traits are matched across different biota in food webs, how this helps predicting global change impacts on ecosystems, and how this will affect people. I'm proud that this research informs global change and biodiversity science and can help designing better management for the ecosystems we all depend on. I thank BBVA, my dear colleagues Sandra Diaz and Mark Westerby, and all adventurers who have joined us along the way for the honor of this award. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lavarelle. Damos ahora la palabra a Michael Gratzel.
We now give the floor to Michael Gratzel, winner of the award in Basic Sciences.
Members of the presidency, authorities, committee members, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests. It's a great honor for me to be here in Bilbao and receive this award, which I accept with gratitude. I was deeply moved when Professor Hensch, the chair of the committee that appoints the prize in basic sciences, called me up on February 22nd to convey to me the excellent news that I had won the BBVA award. It's a great honor for me, and I'd like to thank the members of the committee to support my candidacy. I'd like to also thank my fellow laureates for having received the prize. I was to congratulate my fellow laureates. Perhaps the greatest challenge for our global society is to discover ways to replace the slowly but inevitably vanishing fuel supplies, the fossil fuel supplies, by renewable resources while avoiding the negative impact of the currently used energy systems on the climate, the environment, and health. The quality of human life depends to a large extent on the availability of clean energy sources. The worldwide power consumption is expected to double in the next 3 decades due to the increase in world population and the energy needs, the rising energy needs in developing countries. This demand implies enhanced depletion of fossil fuel reserves, accompanied by further aggravation of the environmental pollution and by acceleration of climate change. Together, these issues threaten to create a planetary emergency of gigantic dimensions. Solar energy is expected to play a crucial role as a future energy source. The sun provides approximately 120,000 terawatts to the Earth's surface, amounting to 6,000 times our present energy consumption rate. However, capturing solar energy and converting it to electricity or to chemical fuels, such as hydrogen, at low cost and using abundantly available raw materials remains a huge challenge. Fundamental science is expected to provide pivotal contributions to identify environmentally friendly solutions to the energy problem. The recent Sky scenario, elaborated by the Shell Corporation, concludes that the photovoltaic production of electricity must increase 200 times over the next few decades to meet the commitments of the Paris Climate Agreement and to stem the rising global temperature within the limit of 2 degrees Celsius. My approach to harvesting solar energy and for converting it to electricity and chemical fuels was inspired by natural photosynthesis. That is the process by which plants capture sunlight to drive the thermodynamically uphill conversion of carbon dioxide to sugar. The solar cells that emerge from our extensive, curiosity-driven fundamental research use a pigment to harvest sunlight, mimicking the action of chlorophyll in the green leaf. Absorption of sunlight by the pigment generates electrons that are transferred to a semiconductor oxide, such as titanium dioxide. Our key contribution has been to arrange the titanium dioxide in a 3-dimensional array of beads, nanoparticles, instead of using it in form of plates like conventional silicon solar cells. Each nanoparticle of titanium dioxide is coated with a pigment which dramatically enhances the light harvesting efficiency of the solar cell, increasing its power conversion efficiency over 1,000 times compared to that of a flat Ti2 plate. Our invention of the three-dimensional nanocrystalline junctions constituted a new paradigm in photovoltaics and opened up a wide and very active field of research after we had shown and calmed the skepticism that this discovery was made in the very beginning. Our discovery has given rise to over 25,000 publications since the first paper appeared in Nature in 1991. The advantages of these cells are multiple: abundant raw materials, cheap manufacturing process, transparency, flexibility, and the ability to obtain electricity from ambient light. Our discovery has given rise to thousands of patents, proving the vigor of its industrial development, which has led by now to a large number of commercial applications. Recently, our research engendered a second revolution in photovoltaics, prompting the advent of perovskite solar cells. Progress in this research area has been amazing since the inception of the youngest member of photovoltaic family some 10 years ago. Their power conversion efficiency increased from 3 to over 25% during this time period, exceeding the power conversion efficiency of the market leader polycrystalline silicon, and stunning the photovoltaic community. I take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to my co-workers and colleagues for their key contributions to the advancements of our research. The BBVA Award honors all of them as much as it honors me. Thanks are also due to the public institutions and industrial companies that supported our research over several decades, in particular the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. I was very fortunate to be supported by my loving family, including my wife and fellow research scientist, Carol, my 3 children, Chauncey, Amy Lynn, and Lillian, and my 4 grandchildren. Last but least, I would like to once again express my sincere gratitude to the BBVA Foundation for awarding me the prestigious Frontiers of Knowledge Award in Basic Science. Thank you.
Professor. Tras estas 3 intervenciones.
After these 3 interventions focusing on different components of the environmental axis, it's now the turn of biomedicine and health through the speech of Professor Ardem Pataputian.
Members of the Presidency, authorities, committee members, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests. I am thrilled to share the 13th Annual BBVA Frontiers Award in Biology and Biomedicine with David Julius. Congratulations, David. This is quite a special award, as you know. The wide net that these awards cast to cover frontiers of knowledge, both in the sciences and in the arts, is very far-sighted and meaningful. Both disciplines are essential for our societies to evolve fair and vibrant communities. On a personal level, both arts and sciences are sources of lessons, inspirations, and indeed much of life's joys. I could not have imagined, as an 18-year-old refugee from Lebanon to the United States, to have a life in the sciences, let alone to be recognized in such a manner. Perhaps because of my background, I try not to take things for granted, and I consider myself privileged to be a scientist and to be here with you today. I am indeed very grateful to the jury, colleagues of my scientific fields, including all members of my laboratory, past and present. And special thanks to my wife, Nancy, who's here today, and my extended family and friends who have supported me over the years. Oh yes, one more reason why I'm so excited for this award. I have long wanted to visit Bilbao with all its amazing art and cuisine. What a fantastic way to experience this wonderful place. David, Julius, and I are being recognized today for our work on identifying and characterizing specialized receptors that our bodies use to sense the physical forces that we experience. Most of biology research is focused on how our bodies sense chemicals, whether these are the sugar that we consume in desserts or the hormones triggered downstream, such as insulin. We have learned quite a bit about sensing such chemicals, but how do we sense stimuli of the physical dimension, such as temperature and pressure? These senses help us recognize a gentle breeze or the prick of a cactus. They also tell us when our blood pressure is increased or when our bladders are full. My laboratory got interested in this topic because of the allure of basic science. It's a fundamental question of sensory biology, the last frontier to be described now that our colleagues have studied and mainly have explained how we see, taste, and smell. To sense temperature and pressure, we have specialized molecules on our cell surfaces that detect these external signals and open to allow changes in the chemical balance. It seems that there are multiple channels needed to discriminate various types of physical forces we can detect, and there are tantalizingly more to be discovered still. I said my group started our work for the love of pure science, but interestingly, we are also uncovering unexpected medical implications for our basic research in such areas as pain, hypertension, atherosclerosis, and osteoporosis. Who would have predicted that, for example, these receptors that we identified could be involved in protection from malaria or susceptibility to excess iron in our blood? The general message here is that we should support basic science, science for science's sake, and that important benefits that are practical in nature will follow. We are living in a golden era of biomedical research, and I hope that young, curious students who are thinking of careers that are both extremely enjoyable and benefit society consider a career in the sciences. And I applaud the BBVA Foundation for recognizing that science is not just for scientists. If anything, during the last year and a half of this pandemic, we have seen the vital importance of not only rational scientific thinking, but also the creation of new medicines for society's health and safety. Thank you for celebrating science. I accept this award with much gratitude.
Thank you very much. Un dominio clave en el mapa del conocimiento.
A key field in the map of 21st century knowledge reflected in the Frontiers Award is information and communication technologies, whose importance in our lives has been particularly evident during the pandemic. We're going to hear first from Professor John Hennessy, one of the creators of the core processors found in virtually every computer, mobile phone, and tablet in use today.
I'm deeply grateful for receiving the BBVA Foundation's Frontiers of Knowledge Award and for sharing it with Isabel Gaon and Vladimir Vaporik. I'm humbled by the group of inventors, both artists and scientists, whose company... It's the wrong speech. The wrong speech. It wasn't my words, so. Trustees and staff of the BBVA Foundation, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests. Dave Patterson and I are very grateful to the BBVA Foundation for this prestigious award. In our research, we proposed that microprocessors should use vocabularies with simple instructions, which we called reduced instruction set computers, abbreviated RISC, instead of vocabularies that used complex instructions, which was the conventional wisdom at the time, so-called complex instruction set computers, or CISCs. We thought it would be more efficient to build microprocessors that understood RISC vocabularies than CISC vocabularies. The large performance advantages offered by the RISC approach were surprising. Although we had qualitative explanations for these performance gains, we did not have a solid quantitative explanation of what was happening. Many of our academic colleagues believed our results, but industry was much more hesitant, which was one of the key motivations behind my efforts to commercialize our research by co-founding MIPS Computer Systems. Unfortunately, the lack of a quantitative explanation also made it hard for the young company to persuade customers of the advantages of RISC and their durability. As I struggled with this dilemma, I decided to break down the time needed to execute a program into the product of three factors: the number of instructions required, the number of clock cycles needed for every instruction, and the length of the clock cycle. The key insight is that the RISC approach sacrificed a small increase in the number of instructions for a large decrease in the number of cycles for each instruction. Overall, the RISC microprocessors offered a performance advantage of 3 to 5 times. Numerous papers have confirmed these advantages over time. As I prepared to return to Stanford at the end of my leave, I was puzzled. Why had we not seen this, and how had the commercial architectures gone so far astray? I realized that both the way we taught computer architecture and the way we evaluated instruction sets was flawed. We taught computer architecture as a survey course, focusing on comparing abstract analyses of instruction sets. And we evaluated instructions by abstract metrics. How many different instructions, how many addressing modes. But what about implementation and performance? That was what mattered. How fast could computers run programs? I talked to Dave Patterson and found that he was equally dismayed about the state of the field and how we were teaching computer architecture. Maybe we should try to write a book to change the way the field was taught and how researchers and engineers thought about building computers. And that was the beginning of a 30-year collaboration. We intended our book to reshape the way the field was taught and structured, to bring a scientific approach to the field, and thus the name of our text, Computer Architecture, a quantitative approach. That CPU performance equation became fundamental, analyzing both the way we thought about instruction sets and implementation approaches. And we followed the quantitative approach throughout the book. We finished a beta edition for use in fall of 1989 and the final version in 1990. The book was well received and widely adopted, selling almost 10,000 copies in the first year. And surprisingly, as many copies were sold to practicing engineers as to students. In his preface, our renowned colleague Gordon Bell said, "The authors have gone beyond the contributions of Thomas to calculus and Samuelson to economics. They have provided the definitive text and reference for computer architecture and design." Happily for us, he was prescient. A number of translations were started, and the book is now available in more than a dozen languages and used around the world. Despite 6 editions and more than 30 years, we still have a great working relationship. And while those fundamental performance equations are still there, 90% of the material in the 6th edition does not appear in the 1st edition. We went on to write an introductory undergraduate version called Computer Organization and Design. Happily, the undergraduate text enabled us to reach an even larger audience. And now, more than 1 million students around the world have learned from our books. Helping students around the world to learn about our field through our books has been incredibly rewarding. This brings me to why the BBVA Frontiers of Knowledge Award is so meaningful to Dave and I. First, it celebrates that early, risky approach we took in our research. The risk ideas were both counterintuitive and controversial. It is unclear, even today, whether the ideas would have gotten traction if only one research team had discovered them. This award also celebrates those early insights and the importance of research that rethinks problems when parameters change, and the willingness to persevere even when some people think you are crazy. Equally importantly, the BBVA Award recognizes the fruits of our 30-year partnership to change the way students are taught and engineers design computers. Today, it's hard to find someone working in our field that has not had the experience of using Hennessy and Patterson or Patterson and Hennessy. And this award celebrates in a special way the global impact we have had. My sincere thanks to the BBVA Foundation and the Award Selection Committee, to my good friend and colleague, Dave Patterson, to our colleagues at Stanford and Berkeley, to my family, and to the many, many students around the world that have graciously journeyed into the field of computer architecture with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. La inteligencia artificial.
Artificial intelligence is one of the transformative technologies with visible impacts today, opening up new opportunities and at the same time posing new challenges. Professor Bernhard Schellkopf, one of the 3 laureates for their fundamental contributions in this field, will now take the floor.
I am deeply grateful for receiving the BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award and for sharing it with Isabelle Guillon and Vladimir Wapnik. It sounds familiar to you. I am humbled by the group of inventors, both artists and scientists, whose company I'm joining. And let me add, I'm particularly humbled that my speech was given by a Turing Prize winner. With 2 cohorts of BBVA Prize winners in the room today, how can one ever hope to be in similar company again? The BBVA Prize is very special to me for 2 reasons. It is awarded in Spain, I'll come to that later, and it's unique in its breadth. It gives special prominence to fields crucial for our future: ecology, climate change, and information technology. So why is information technology crucial to our future? The first industrial revolution was enabled by the steam engine and water power. The second one was driven by electrification. So both were about how to generate and convert forms of energy. The current transformation has been called the digital revolution, but it really started already in the mid-20th century under the name of cybernetics. Its protagonist is not energy, but information. Like energy, information can be processed by people. But to do it at an industrial scale, we needed to invent computers. Like energy, information may be a conserved quantity, so we may not be able to truly generate it. As in the 2 industrial revolutions, we observe 2 phases in the current transformation. The first one was driven by the birth of computer science, the development of programming and the beginnings of symbolic artificial intelligence. That is the hope that we can make computers truly intelligent by instructing them to manipulate symbols according to programs written by us. In this phase, computers processed information that was specifically prepared for them. In other words, the symbols were provided by us. The second phase, taking place now, unlocks a new information source by gleaning patterns in unstructured data, such as real-world images. The enabling technology for this is machine learning, and today is almost a synonym for machine learning. A particularly elegant way to do machine learning uses a mathematical similarity measure called a kernel.
Isabel, Vladimir, I, and others applied those kernels to generalize a range of linear learning algorithms to nonlinear settings, while preserving the simplicity of the linear method to allow analysis in terms of statistical learning theory. We were also able to generalize linear algorithms to data that was non-vectorial and structured in various ways. Working on those topics with Vladimir, Isabel, and others, such as Alex Smola and Chris Burgess, was truly exciting. Once you have tasted how it feels to be part in discovering or creating something genuinely new, you are addicted to the big questions. But the story doesn't end here. AI moved from a symbolic stage towards machine learning, and now it may be starting to move toward a causal stage. We recognize that an understanding of the world cannot be built on mere correlations, but it requires knowledge of what happens when we intervene in a system. This will take us one step closer to computers that think in the sense of Konrad Lorenz, which means they act in an imagined space. We have devoted the last decade to the problem of causality, including the basic problem of how to distinguish cause and effect from observations. Like machine learning, this is beginning to have impact in science and technology. As a hobby astronomer, I was happy when one of our causal learning algorithms helped find new exoplanets, and one of them turning out to be the first exoplanet in the habitable zone where atmospheric water was discovered. The first two industrial revolutions had major consequences for all our lives, and the ongoing one may be similar. In fact, it is our information processing abilities, not our physical strength, that make us human. Machines that process information touch the human condition in more subtle ways than machines that are merely processing energy. We are beginning to see this in many ways. AI can diagnose diseases, manipulate information, influence elections, even help build weapons that take autonomous decisions without being accountable. This is one reason why we should study and understand AI also in Europe in a broad sense. Machine learning is technology built by people to serve purposes. Those purposes are bound to human culture and ethics. If we do not want to become mere consumers of technology invented elsewhere, built on values we may or may not share, it is crucial that the state-of-the-art in AI is researched and invented in Europe, embedded in our open societies. We have no knowledge of the future, but we can influence it. This is one side of Shannon's duality between future and past. Vice versa, we cannot influence the past, but we have knowledge of it. And I can thus try to give thanks to those without whom I would not stand here today. The BBVA Foundation and the prize jury for the great honor of this award, the Max Planck Society, my students, postdocs, and collaborators for their support, insight, and trust. Mi familia, que ha llevado la...
And my family that have shared their life with a scientist. And I trust and hope that they have also been rewarded occasionally by this. Or perhaps, as I form part of this marvelous ceremony here in the Basque Country where my wife Anna was born. Thank you, eskerrik asko.
Eskerrik asko. Entre los grandes retos.
Amongst the great challenges that we face are also economic crises. In less than a quarter of a century, we've been through two deep global crises. Professor Mark Gertler of New York University is one of the 4 economics laureates, will now take the floor.
Members of the Presidency, authorities, committee members, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests, I would like to thank the BBVA and the jury for awarding me this distinguished prize. It is also a great honor to receive the prize with my good friends Ben Bernanke, Nobuo Kiyotaki, and John Moore. I am sometimes asked by young economists what career advice I would give. My answer is simple: find good co-authors. This thought brings me back to 1978, when I was a freshly minted Stanford PhD. A mutual friend introduced me to a bright, young, new PhD from MIT, Ben Bernanke. It was an exciting time as two major methodological revolutions were in process. In macroeconomics, the rational expectations revolution pioneered the use of micro-foundations to build macro models. In microeconomics, the economics of information was providing a rigorous way to incorporate real-world frictions in markets and in financial markets in particular. Though our eventual research would build on both literatures, this was not the subject of our initial discussion. Instead, it was baseball. But after that, it was the Great Depression. Even then, Ben was known for having an outsized interest in the Depression. I had to ask him why. His response: if you want to learn geology, study earthquakes. If you want to know economics, study the Great Depression. And so, a few years later, we embarked on an effort to develop a framework that could explain phenomena like the Depression. What our theory emphasizes are fluctuations in borrowers' access to credit that in turn depend upon their respective financial health. For example, as an economic downturn sets in, the associated decline in cash flows, equity values, and so on weakens borrower balance sheets. As borrowers' financial health declines, they become less creditworthy, leading lenders to restrict credit access. This endogenous reduction in credit access, in turn, leads to a kind of adverse feedback loop. Less access to credit reduces borrowing and spending, which amplifies the economic downturn, and so on. Ben and I termed this adverse feedback loop between the real and financial sectors the financial accelerator. While financial crises from the time of the Depression differ in detail, we think that at the core, these crises, including the most recent one, have played out as the financial accelerator theory describes. Our early work was mainly theoretical, but to bring financial factors into mainstream macroeconomics, we needed to develop a quantitative framework. Fortunately, we were joined by a bright young student of mine, Simon Gilchrist. Our challenge was the following. In the existing models, financial markets were frictionless, implying no role whatsoever for financial conditions to affect behavior. To build in a meaningful financial sector, we used insights from both our financial accelerator theory and the credit cycle theory of Kiyotaki and Moore. The end product was a framework that could offer insights about real and financial sector interactions that one could place on the shelf alongside other macro models. I have now brought you up to the late 1990s, but I have to confess that at this time, I had no idea that a decade later, the most complex financial crisis in modern history would hit industrialized nations across the globe. I had even less idea that my co-author, Ben Bernanke, the academic's academic, would be Fed chairman at the time. But in one of the great coincidences of history, the person most qualified to manage a financial crisis was at the helm as the crisis unfolded. It was no surprise to me that through bold and creative action, the Bernanke Federal Reserve contained the crisis, saving the global economy from a catastrophic collapse. The great financial crisis has also provided new challenges for research. Throughout history, financial innovation has led to shifts in what are the vulnerable sectors of the financial system. As a result, our models must be continuously updated to capture the risks to the economy. In the case of the Great Recession, the growth of shadow banking, which moved risky mortgage lending outside the commercial banking system and therefore outside tight regulatory control, was responsible for the buildup of financial vulnerability. Fortunately, another set of excellent co-authors came along, including Peter Karate, Nobu Kiyotaki, and Andrea Prestipino. In various projects, we adapted the Financial Accelerator credit cycle framework to feature the critical role in the crisis of banking and shadow banking. In particular, Nobu and I developed a theory of how the banking panics that led to the collapse of Lehman Brothers ultimately led to the sharp contraction in real economic activity. Finally, a word about research on the new central bank policy toolkit. Perhaps the defining feature of the Bernanke Fed during the crisis was the introduction of a whirlwind of new and unconventional monetary policies. The most famous was quantitative easing, or QE as it is known for short, which involved the central bank's purchase of long-term securities. In response to critics who questioned how this would work, Bernanke famously quipped, "QE works in practice, just not in theory." To my co-authors and I, though, the logic of the Financial Accelerator credit cycle framework implied that unconventional monetary policies, including QE, can improve credit access, especially when this access has been disrupted as it had been during the crisis. We accordingly developed a framework where unconventional monetary policies like QE could be analyzed alongside standard monetary policy. I want to emphasize that the issues I have been discussing are not relegated to the past. It is true that the recent recession did not feature a major financial crisis. But this is because the Federal Reserve and other central banks intervened early in the crisis to stabilize financial markets using the unconventional tools devised just a decade earlier. These considerations, plus the fact that financial innovation keeps the location of vulnerabilities a moving target, means that work on real financial sector interactions is with us to stay. Let me end with a word of thanks to my most significant partners, my wife Caroline and my kids Sarah and Sam. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And we're now going to hear via a live link from Washington, Professor Bernanke.
Thank you. I'm honored to receive the BBVA Foundation's Frontiers of Knowledge Award. I'm particularly pleased to share the award with such a distinguished and productive group of scholars. All of the award recipients have contributed to our understanding of how stress in financial markets, especially banking and credit markets, affects the course of the economy, including jobs, output, and inflation. Given the catastrophic effects of the global financial crisis a little more than a decade ago, one would think that this linkage would be well understood by economists. But unfortunately, even on the eve of the crisis, most economic models used for forecasting and policymaking did not incorporate sophisticated analyses of credit markets and how they could break down. That is now changing, and the work of the four of us, as well as many other researchers, has helped provide the foundations for that change. My own interest in this topic was the result of an accidental confluence. In graduate school at MIT in the late 1970s, working with mentors like Stan Fisher and Peter Temin, I developed a strong interest in economic history, especially, as Mark mentioned, the Great Depression of the 1930s. The Depression combined three critical elements. First, a dozen years of high unemployment ended only by mobilization for World War II. Second, the contraction of the money supply, emphasized by Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz, and the associated sharp deflation in prices. And three, global financial collapse, including waves of banking panics in the United States and Europe. What were the deep connections among these phenomena? I would later write that fully understanding the Depression was, quote, the holy grail of macroeconomics. Seemingly unrelatedly, my first job after graduate school was at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. At the time, with scholars like Bob Wilson and David Krebs, Stanford was a leader in the study of the economics of imperfect information and principal agent models. As I learned about this work, I began to understand that it provided the basis for new thinking about the workings of credit markets. Lenders must always confront imperfect information about the characteristics and opportunities of their potential borrowers. To overcome this information asymmetry, lenders must gather intelligence about borrowers and structure the terms of the loan to provide incentives for repayment. The economics of imperfect information clarified how this could be done and how the process could break down. It also showed the factors that determine the cost of lending. In my 1983 paper on the Depression, I coined the term cost of credit intermediation to describe the cost of making a loan over and above the cost of funds. That cost is now more often referred to as the external finance premium. The key insight of the models I learned about at Stanford is that the external finance premium depends on, among other things, the net worth of banks and their borrowers. For example, a borrower whose net worth is large relative to a requested loan, think of a home buyer with a large down payment, will have a low external finance premium because the borrower's large equity stake aligns her incentives more closely with those of the lender and provides a greater cushion in case of bad outcomes. Banks are also ultimately borrowers themselves, since they must obtain the funds to lend from savers and investors. So their net worth, their capital, likewise matters for the overall cost of lending. When banks are decapitalized because of credit losses, for example, they must pay more for funds themselves, leading the external finance premiums for their customary borrowers to rise. When these ideas are combined with macroeconomic models, the lesson is that recession, deflation, and credit collapse are all interconnected. Economic downturns that reduce the net worth of borrowers and lenders also increase the aggregate external finance premium, throwing sand into the gears of the credit mechanism. In the Depression, the deflation of prices greatly intensified this dynamic. Think of a farmer trying to pay a fixed mortgage while commodity prices are collapsing. Widespread default in turn triggered banking panics and the breakdown of credit markets, which depressed investment, spending, and hiring, and which, in a vicious circle, further damaged credit markets. There are many more details I will omit here, but in brief, the economics of imperfect information helps provide and clarify the missing links among the financial health of lenders and borrowers, the functioning of credit markets, and overall economic performance. It brings us that much closer to the holy grail of understanding the Depression. My arrival at Stanford had another substantial benefit, which is that that's where I met my future co-author and friend, Mark Gertler, who, as he mentioned, was completing his PhD there at the time. Mark and I discussed these and related ideas endlessly, and over the years would write many papers together. With Simon Gilchrist, Mark and I showed that endogenous changes in the external finance premium, the dynamic called the financial accelerator, can help explain the severity of economic recessions and booms. Simon and Egon Zakarzek would later show that the external finance premium is an excellent predictor of the business cycle. Mark and I would also investigate how monetary policy can affect the external finance premium, giving rise to the so-called credit channel of monetary policy. In 2002, I joined the Fed, where I would ultimately have to contend with credit market breakdowns as a policymaker. But Mark continued to develop these themes, including in his excellent work with Nobuo Kiyotaki, which provided much insight into the interaction of the economy and the stability of the banking system. I could say much more, but time is short. Let me close by thanking my co-authors and colleagues at Stanford, Princeton, and the Federal Reserve, my wife Anna for her constant support, and of course, the Foundation for this wonderful award. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Bernanke. Vamos a finalizar con dos representantes de la...
We will end with two representatives of social sciences and humanities, to which the Frontier Awards have dedicated a category for the last 3 editions. And firstly, we'll hear from Susan Fisk, creator together with Shelley Taylor of a new scientific field called social cognition, fundamental to understand the mechanisms through which individuals understand the social world, other people, and themselves.
members of the presidency, authorities, committee members, fellow laureates, and distinguished guests. We are deeply honored by this immense and completely unexpected award. Along with my co-awardee, Shelley Taylor, who could not be here, I am grateful for the generosity and the vision of the BBVA Foundation in establishing these awards, as well as the hard work of the nominators and selectors in recognizing the importance of science to society. We hope to represent the social sciences well in this inaugural year of their inclusion in the Frontiers Award, because our work reflects the contribution not just of our labs, but of the whole fields of research that we brought together. We appreciate our particular award's recognition of multidisciplinary inventive integration. In synthesis, there is creativity. New ideas grow not just at the center of normal science, but also at the periphery where one field of science overlaps another. The intellectual freedom to combine insights from neighboring fields requires a willingness to risk a look over the edge, maybe with equal parts imagination and innocence, equal parts rebellion and reinvention. Let me illustrate. Our 1984 book, Social Cognition, in effect founded a field. Its topic is how people make sense of each other. This everyday experience of forming impressions turns out to be a miracle of sorts. People infer other people's unobservable predispositions from their behavior in context. Human behavior is a complicated phenomenon to interpret. Behavior is inherently ambiguous, unreliable, a noisy signal. But it's the social perceiver's main basis for inferring another person's mood, attitudes, intent, personality traits. The perceiver's challenge of mind reading requires insights from two fields of psychological science: social psychology, which studies face-to-face interaction, and cognitive psychology, which studies human information processing. Having to integrate different approaches to the same phenomena sharpens the analysis. Eclectic sources allow the scientist to choose the best theoretical frameworks and most precise tools for the problem at hand. The project began around 1980 when a psychology department head invited a new assistant professor to write a book for his prestigious series, capturing the emerging field at the nexus of cognitive science and social psychology. This was an intriguing challenge because young faculty were beginning to teach this topic, and certainly lots of people were investigating it, so these were exciting times. But the field had no coherent framework. And in my field, junior faculty are not supposed to write books. Undaunted, the assistant professor, me, invited her advisor, Taylor, to co-author the book. This was a fortunate choice because the first edition had more than 1,100 references. It was fortunate also because Taylor specialized in the adaptive role of positive illusions. Excessive optimism, excessive sense of control, and self-confidence. These were useful illusions in completing the project. Fisk specialized in biases and how teamwork can overcome them, also useful here. Altogether, the collaboration was advisable. But the risk was great and the outcome was uncertain. The goal was combining cognitive and social psychology to see how people think about people. This was a challenge because the two fields have different norms and sensibilities. Cognition lends itself to a keen focus on specific processes of thinking, attention, memory, inference. For example, how many units can a typical person hold in mind? Classically 7 plus or minus 2. Online mental resources have a limited bandwidth in the short-term moment. We coined the term cognitive miser to express this meta-theory. Limited capacity human thinkers will develop shortcuts to reason, for example, about pandemic contagion. Instead of reading all the details of each new study, one might follow the advice of a trusted, respected authority. Instead of reading the demographics about who is contagious, one might follow one's gut feeling about who is contaminated, for example, strangers rather than family. Suddenly, the problem is not just cognition, it's social cognition. Determining who is contagious, trustworthy, or expert are not simple judgments. but people judge each other all the time. In contrast to the cognitive approach of breaking each problem down into small pieces, social judgment requires looking at the whole person. What happens when the limited capacity processor meets a whole complicated human? It takes shortcuts, in this case, stereotypes. Cognitive misers simplify the human world into in-groups that are on their side with warm intent and out-groups who are not trustworthy. Besides being warm, people judge those who are competent to act on their attention or not. For example, scientists are viewed as competent but not so warm. Old people are viewed as warm but not so competent. Refugees are stereotyped as neither. Middle-class citizens of the country are stereotyped as high on both dimensions. Like other cognitive shortcuts, stereotypes persist because they are efficient, even if they're inaccurate or unfair. This cognitive approach to prejudice suggests the normality of categorizing people into groups and then judging them by stereotypes. It's a shortcut. Social cognition research like this has exploded in the 40 years since we wrote the first edition of the book, growing from 508 pages to 658 in the 2021 edition, and now including applications to health, education, organizations, politics, and much more. In all these settings, people must make sense of each other in order to survive and thrive. We were lucky to be writing the first overview to define the field. Gradually, the book became a favorite resource. More than 20,000 citations later, the book receiving this award from the BBVA Foundation affirms that taking the risk did advance our science for the greater good. Thank you to the BBVA Foundation, to our families, and to our colleagues for producing the research that we could honor.
Finalmente, escuchamos al profesor.
And finally, we will listen to Professor Gerald Holton, who over several decades has illuminated the key role of science in shaping culture and its emancipatory power, and at the same time, the influence of some components of the cultural envelope on science. With only a few months to go before his 100th birthday, he hasn't been able to travel to Bilbao, but he wanted to record the speech, which we offer now.
First of all, I wish to express my deep gratitude for receiving this extraordinary Frontiers of Knowledge Award in the Humanities from the BBVA Foundation, which is a family of awards embracing a broad spectrum of disciplines from the basic sciences to the arts and the humanities. Its actions intend to throw light on two different but related aspects in our culture. One aspect is attention to my work as a scientist and historian of science over many years. I must acknowledge that I had the amazing luck that in my PhD research at Harvard University, I was supervised by the science philosopher and Nobelist P.W. Bridgman. His advice helped me for the following 30 years to run my high-pressure researches. Eventually, my interests also moved into the history and philosophy of science, especially the analysis of the humanistic thought processes that animate the original scientific work. This focused especially on the most productive and transformative scientists, such as Johannes Kepler, Isaac Newton, but above all, Albert Einstein. It turned out that those and many other scientists operated in their research not only with the usual tools and intuitions, but also powerfully with a certain type of fundamentally philosophical conceptions, quietly assumed by them, which I have called thematic ideas. The finding in my work on them led me also to incorporate in my books and in my activities as teacher and mentor the humanistic elements animating all true advances and insights. My research and publications have also sought to analyze how society at large rewards the place of science in our culture, and to understand the cultural contributions of science as a central civilizing force, fostering rationality and objectivity, and the many challenges it has confronted from early modernity to the present day. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that there is another vital aspect behind the Frontiers of Knowledge Award in the humanities. That refers to the unique and deeply moving concern of the BBVA Foundation, which is an institution supported by a global financial group, with the pursuit of knowledge, encompassing as a continuum science and the humanities. In our time, the prevalent separation and splintering of the different parts of our culture are all too often taken for granted. But in opposition, I have followed the advice of Alfred North Whitehead. He said, "In the conditions of modern life, the rule is absolute. The race which does not value trained intelligence is doomed. Therefore, the unique actions on behalf of mending across the gaps by the foundations are to be especially honored." So, with 1,000 thanks for the award, as well as its larger meaning, coming toward the end of my long life, I greet you with my heartiest embrace.
Thank you very much, Professor Holton. Muchas gracias y nuestra felicitación.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to the 35 winners. We're now moving on to the final stretch of this ceremony with the institutional speeches. And firstly, we're going to hear from the President of the CSIC, Professor Rosa Menéndez.
Señor Lehendakari,
Mr. Lehendakari, Mayor of Bilbao, Leader of the Vizcaya Provincial Government, President of the BBVA Foundation, Director of the BBVA Foundation, authorities, academic authorities, and members of the jury, laureates, colleagues, and friends. Science is today more than ever vital to face global challenges: pandemics, climate change, conservation of our natural heritage, of our biodiversity, and our oceans. But let's not forget other relevant things, such as a sustainable global model for using natural resources, or ethical management of digitization, just to give some examples. The Frontiers of Knowledge Awards highlight this, and I want to reiterate this in my brief speech. Scientific advance that is necessary to pinpoint and to broach and face these challenges, something that arises from curiosity, from creativity, and of course from the very determination of those people that have been awarded these prizes today, and to whom we today thank them for their effort. As President of the Superior Council for Scientific Research, or the CSIC, I'm really proud of our collaboration with the BBVA Foundation in recognizing their work and in sharing this event with the social and political authorities that are with us here this evening. This is an excellent and a unique forum, and I should like to, on this occasion, insist on getting across a message that you probably already have heard. The need to develop an agreement for science, a global accord for science, because global challenges require global cooperation. The Sustainable Development Goals have already set the path that we must follow, but we also need resources and a correct structure to use these resources. We need urgently to strengthen collaboration mechanisms at all levels. That means locally, regionally, nationally, and of course internationally. If we are going to face the global challenges that I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, we need to move forward in the way we manage this global collaboration and create co-creation spaces, and in this way improve the way we share knowledge between scientists, business, society and managers, and lay the foundations for open science. Pandemic has shown that this model can work. However, it needs to be closely looked at and it needs to be strengthened if we are aiming our efforts at recovery and resilience in society. Science needs to be open, must be open, but it also needs to be fair and inclusive. It needs to truly encourage collaboration by sharing the same values so that progress leaves nobody behind. It's a model change, and that requires running risks, high risks, because it's a matter of reconciling different interests and different cultures. We all as individuals have different cultures, and of course at a local level, and I hardly need to mention how different they are at a global level. So it's a challenge for the whole of the scientific community. We're very much aware of that in the institution that I chair. But it's our mission to try to do this, because the future of our planet and, of course, the future of upcoming generations depends upon this. So it's in our hands, within our reach. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm now going to hand the floor on to Carlos Torres Vila, Chairman of the BBVA Foundation and the BBVA Group.
Lehendakari, Diputado General.
Lehendakari, Deputy General of Vizcaya, dear Mayor of Bilbao, and Chairman of the General Assembly of Vizcaya, dear authorities, rectors and chairperson of the CSIC, award winners, ladies and gentlemen, good evening everybody, and good afternoon, and welcome everybody. Well, after the shutdown of the pandemic, we've come back to this wonderful city of Bilbao, which is the permanent headquarters of this Frontiers of Knowledge Awards giving ceremony to hold the 12th and the 13th edition of these international awards. As you know, it's 35 laureates from many academic institutions and many countries. It's an honor. It's an honor to have most of them here sitting here tonight, in spite of the difficult circumstances we are still encountering. And the award winners represent a broad range of the world of the arts, of humanities and music, and let's say that they serve as a guidance and as an inspiration for everybody. And these advances that we're celebrating here provide us with a number of tools so that we can address the current challenges and future challenges of our society. And these awards are also a true reflection of what the BBVA wants to do. It wants to make available to everybody the opportunities of this new era. And, well, this can only be achieved, or you can only do this by having the best possible knowledge. And in the ceremony of 2 years ago, and when I announced the fact that these prizes were going to be celebrated here, I said that we were going to have the awards giving ceremony here every year. But that wasn't the case because unfortunately the pandemic arrived that has changed things so drastically. Science and knowledge are playing a fundamental role as regards addressing the consequences of this pandemic on many levels, from biomedicine to technology and social. The international scientific community has responded perfectly well, over and above our expectations, and this wouldn't have been possible without the previous advances in the field of basic research, like fundamental findings on the sequencing and biocomputation, for instance, or bioinformatics. But apart from the pandemic, we are experiencing some very deep changes because there have been major technological disruptions, and we've heard somebody mention these things today in the speeches, and also because we have the sustainability challenge that was also mentioned by many of the award winners that have spoken. New technologies, these new technologies associated with digitalization in fields like artificial intelligence or robotics, human genomes, or quantum computation, together with the decarbonization movement and the changes that have been made in our consumption patterns, are transforming our economy. They are also transforming the way we live, and they are transforming how we relate to each other. And this is something that was underscored by the studies carried out by the award winners in the category of social sciences, as mentioned previously. So all of these developments are interconnected, and with a continuous advance of knowledge in many domains, which at a glance might seem to have no connection whatsoever. Technological advances in the last decade are also based on the pioneer work carried out in terms of designing computational architecture, quantum cryptography, of the award winners in the category of basic sciences and information technologies, on ICTs basically. So COVID-19 also overlaps with another two global challenges that are far more complex, that is climate change and the loss of biodiversity, for which there is no such thing as a vaccine. Today we are aware of the fact that we all have to change our production model and the way we live, and our societies too. And many of our award winners in their studies on oceans and on marine biodiversity have focused a lot on the traits of plants, on hurricanes, and the adaptation strategies to climate change. And these are the loudspeakers that point out clearly that we're facing a new reality. But if there's something that we have learned over the last few months with COVID-19, is that when we address challenges that go beyond our geographic frontiers, but also beyond the borders of our knowledge, we have to articulate a global response, a coordinated response that is based on research, innovation, and education. The origin of these awards is based on the fact that knowledge is the best tool to understand the world and to understand ourselves, so that we can create opportunities for all. And to end this speech, once again, I would like to thank the Basque authorities for their significant support. Lehendakari, Deputy General, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much wholeheartedly for your support in this initiative. Bilbao and the Basque country, as you know, represent the living roots of the BBVA group. The Banco de Bilbao was established in 1857, and it gave rise to what we are nowadays, the Grupo BBVA, and since its beginnings shares a vocation with the city. It wants to open up and wants to innovate, and is also focused on leadership and entrepreneurship. And this is what we're like today. And so this, I think, is the driving force behind the transformation of Bilbao. Now it's become a city based on knowledge, and it's an attractive place for excellence and for future. And I would also like to, thank the members of the jury for their commitment towards these prizes, and many thanks to the CSIC. who has been cooperating with the Fundación BBVA for a decade. And finally, if you will allow me to, I would like to speak to the award winners in English.
One of you, for your remarkable contributions. Your work is a source of inspiration to all of us. Your presence here today under the current difficult circumstances is an honor to the city of Bilbao and to the BBVA Foundation and makes these awards even greater. Welcome to the family of the Frontiers of Knowledge awardees. Eta amaitzen dut, eskerrak emanez bihotz gaur hemen zaudeten guztioi. Gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And to close this special ceremony of the Frontiers of Knowledge Award, I would like to ask the President of the Basque Government, the Lehendakari, Mr. Inigo Urkullu, to take the stage.
BBVA Fundazioaren presidente eta ordezkariok, CSICeko.
Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the BBVA Foundation, dear authorities and representatives of our society. Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, good evening to the award winners and to the members of the committee. So thank you all very much indeed. I would like to congratulate you and, well, please feel welcome to the Basque Country, to Bilbao. Today, September the 21st, we were in Vitoria and remembering the people that have died as a consequence of COVID. And since the World Health Organization declared the pandemic on March 11th of 2020, more than 4.5 million people have died. Well, 4,700 people in the Basque Country. So we must express our solidarity with their families, which in many cases couldn't even bid farewell to their beloved family members. May they rest in peace. So I would also like to say a few words of solidarity for the people of the island of La Palma, where they are suffering the consequences of the eruption of the volcano. And secondly, I would also like to congratulate the award winners and the BBVA Foundation. I would like to congratulate them on their wonderful contributions towards knowledge, and also because they have helped us clarify the future through their work and through their collaboration and through the contribution they've made towards society, and they've actually pointed out the way that we're supposed to follow. So situations like the pandemic allow us to envisage a much better future, and I think that they show us the path that we have to follow in this area of knowledge. The pandemic has influenced our own personal, family and social lives over 18 months. So we've learned lots of lessons that I believe are very useful, and I would like to point out three basic ideas. The first one is that the pandemic is a global reality. It's affected all of us people everywhere in the world, and it's shown us the path towards collaboration, and, well, nobody has adopted an individual solution. Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are a reference in this respect. So then we have the global challenges that affect mankind, require global solutions too, that are multidisciplinary, and also an integral approach for these problems. And the second lesson is that the pandemic has shown how important it is to invest in science and knowledge. And these awards from the BBVA Foundation, I think, recognize the work that has been done in this field. And the President has mentioned research and innovation and development, and I agree with him. And the third element, and that is that we're facing a completely new stage in our lives, and I think that we can form part of a reflection, global reflection on our values and our life culture, our relationships, and our model as regards future developments. I think that this framework offers us this opportunity. And we are showing how important knowledge is at this event, how important science is, but also how important collaboration is, because collaboration is the instrument that will allow us to overcome these limitations and go beyond these borders. So by doing what is unknown, so that can become known to everybody, and so that we can make further progress in terms of global challenges like health, climate change, sustainability, and also demographic movements, digitization, artificial intelligence, and also extending education and culture. The BBVA Foundation offers us the opportunity of sharing from the Basque Country these remarks on the frontiers of knowledge, a reflection that I think will determine the future of mankind as a whole. So I would like to congratulate the 35 award winners who now join the family of knowledge. Your work is an example, it's a reference, and it's also something that I know will change our society. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Eskerrik asko, lehendakari jauna.
Thank you very much, Lehendakari. And on behalf of the BBVA Foundation and the CSIC, thank you for taking part in this ceremony that celebrates science and culture. This year has had a special significance because it symbolizes the gradual emergence from a pandemic, thanks to a large extent to the sustained work of the Scientific Committee. On this occasion, we can't have a traditional cocktail because of the restrictions, and instead of that there will be an hour-long celebratory drink during which, seated at tables of 8, we'll be able to toast the health of the award winners and their families and chat with colleagues and friends as a group. We invite you all to this informal extension of the tribute to the award winners. I would ask all guests to please remain in their seats while the chair and the authorities, prize winners and jurors leave the room. And I would also like you to please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you very much. Firstly, the laureates of this 12th edition should go down the staircase. Would you like to gradually move down the stairs?
Tras ellos, los galardonados de la
And behind them, the laureates of the 13th edition.
Y por último, la presidencia.
And now the presidency.